Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to World of Warships. This is VuduVince, and we're going to be talking about the Benson today, Tier 8, standard line U.S. destroyer. I got a buddy of mine that's running them and wanted some pointers. Excuse me. It has the 9.2 kilometer torps on them, but they're kind of slow. I think they're like 60, 62 knots, something like that. They're not Italian, lethargic, but they're not super speedy like the Europeans. So I had a gun, a game on here that I called Run and Gun Benson, and it was more or less a decent game. Kind of showcases some of the strengths of the Benson and a little bit of what I was doing. This video is actually relatively old. I don't actually know when this was. It must have been around Christmas time because look at the yeah, it must have been around December because there's the Christmas stuff going on over in the background. So it was a little while back, but it was a decent game, and it showcases some of the strengths of the American DD line before you get to the gearing, and that is gunfighting. They have good 127s, 5-inch dual-purpose guns, decent torps with a decent range, just a lot of utility. The Americans are known for having a lot of utility. And I use that word a lot, and you're like, okay, Video, what the hell are you talking about, utility? The ability to get into multiple and different situations and get out of them. The ability to go, I found myself over here in a funky situation. Can I extricate myself? Can I get out of it? Yes. Why? Because I have multiple tools at my disposal. I have decent AA. I have decent speed with a speed boost. I can run defensive AA module if I want to. I've got decent torps. They hit fairly hard. They've got decent range. They're a little slow. They take a little time to react. I've got good fast-firing guns. They rotate quickly. I can build the boat into a destroyer as far as a gun destroyer, or I can run torpedoes. Personally, with the Americans, my own decision is I run them as a gun primary, except for Benham. And the torpedoes are secondary. That just will see you through a lot of other problems, especially if you run into the French, now the Europeans, or even the Russians to a degree. And some of the newer Japanese boats, but that's at Tier 10. So at Tier 8, really you're going to run into an Ognivoy, the Akazuki, maybe a Kazakh. There's some boats that are a problem. You usually want to attack as a DD. You typically want to attack from a position of strength, ambush if you can. And this game kind of showcases a little bit of that. So let's go ahead and bounce forward just a little bit. So we're in the Benson. We've got a fairly even layout here. We don't have a CV to worry about as far as when you're entering the game. You want to be looking for that radar. So they have Neptune. I think he could have radar. Baltimore is definitely going to have radar. Amalfi's hydro only. And then you want to check their DDs to see what you may be running into, what spot ranges, things like that. Akazuki, he's going to have a high detectability. The Hirakazi can have a lower detectability. He can get it down to about 5.8, 5.5, I want to say. Fairly low, but it depends on what variant he's got situated. He could have the extremely fast-firing 127s, but he's only got 3 tubes. 3 turrets with 1 tube each, or he could have the slower Japanese 127s, very slow to traverse. They hit hard, but they aren't for knife fighting. Or you could go the middle route with the duck turrets, the 100 millimeters, and those are a good balance, and they're a decent dueling set of turrets. But the Akazuki is the gun variant of the Japanese, so both of those could be danger to us. We don't want to fight them head up if we don't have to. We don't have a heal in the Benson. The Akazuki doesn't have a heal, and the Hirakazi doesn't, if I recall. We have Ashishio B, 20 kilometers, but he's deep water only. He's not going to be much assistance to us. We have a St. Louis, a Baltimore, and an Edinburgh on our team, so we have a little bit of radar with our Baltimore, but who knows where they're going to be at. I enter these gunfights with the sense that I'm going to be fighting alone. And I fight that way the entire time. You don't know who on your team you can rely on. So you go with the option of going, I'm going to be fighting alone. So let's jump right in. So we're on, not sure what the name of this map is, up Greece. I apologize. And I'm going to go ahead. I've spawned south of A, so we're going to proceed to the A cap. And so what we're doing is we're not going to be the first people in the cap. Now we're chatting here. People are talking about pushing to one side or the other without defending one side or the other, and I'm recommending against that. So you don't want to be the first people on the cap typically, because that's just going to draw a lot of heat to you right out of the gate, especially since we don't have a CV to spot for us and we haven't detected any other ships in the area yet. So we don't want to be the first people on the scene, because if a Baltimore has decided to cruise into that cap zone, he's going to use his radar, most likely. Even if he can't see us, someone else may be able to. So we don't want to be the very first thing seen, because that's usually how you just get half health and derped, and it really hurts you early game if that happens to you. So we go ahead and we proceed, and what we're looking for is actually this gap here to the left, which is actually here at this kind of crosshatch of EF12. And so what we're looking for is an escape area. We want to always be looking for that place to escape. What if something pops up here? What if something pops up there? I need an exfil. I need an area to get out of. So we detect Akazuki relatively early. I'm not sure if he fired or if I just spotted him out there. Maybe he's a low captain skill. Maybe he doesn't have all the modules on board. Anyway, we spotted him about 7-1, which is outside his minimum, which I think is about 6'8" or 6'5". I think it's about 6'8". So that can kind of go to tell you that this commander is not trained or that he's not got the boat set up right yet. So we don't initially start shooting. And the reason why is we hadn't been detected. And again, we don't want to be the very first thing that the enemy sees. So if there's not a lot of gunfire going back and forth, the DeGros is shooting down south, which is fine. We're more worried about cruisers that have not been detected by us or have not shot at anybody yet, having nothing to shoot at. Then suddenly there's a DD, and you know that everyone's going to shoot at the DD first. So we apologize about the sound there. We proceed forward here, and we're looking to get positioned first before we shoot. And this is a good idea anytime you're playing anything. Battleships, cruisers primarily, especially Benson cruisers and DDs, to get to your position first if you're not detected, then begin your engagement. The bad guys aren't going anywhere, and if they do get away, so what? You're still in a good, safe position. So we're still outside our detectability slightly. We're at 6'1". Our max detectability right now is 5'8". And we're looking for that being detected. Now, we could go ahead and shoot here, but then we would be spotted for that 20 seconds between salvos. One of the other things is that he's not aware that I'm there. So he's not in a defensive kind of posture yet. He's not looking to, okay, I need to be ready for torps. I need to be ready for gunfire. He doesn't know I'm there. So I can attack from a position of surprise because nobody's seen me yet. So what we do is we proceed forward here, and we get detected just for a second, maybe so little that he might not even notice. Now, as we're noticing his circles here for his smoke, where he's popped smoke, we can watch and see that he proceeds forward. And I actually do some blind firing here, and I had to rewatch the video a couple times and go, how did I know he was right there? But it was because I was watching. So we go ahead and we launch more or less kind of an overlaid pattern of torps. So instead of launching them side by side like this, we launch more or less over like this. And so you get kind of this very even, where they're kind of spreading across one another, and you get the very good crosshatch kind of launch pattern. Laying them in side by side is good, but if you get a little bit of overlap, typically you'll get some spots where it's pretty difficult for bad guys to squeeze through a lot of times. Plus, this dude seemed to be newer. I don't think he was really paying attention, and he ends up getting vaporized by this spread. But at this point, if you look, if we roll it back just a couple of seconds here, and we look, let's see, so we launch, and if you look, you see how you've got these round circles here. So you've got round here, and then it cuts inward, and this circle kind of cuts here, and then this one kind of comes out and is actually further past the point of this one. So it'd kind of be like a circle. You kind of cut in, and then you come back out again. So if you predict that, then you can tell that this boat came up here, popped a circle, went out this way, then came back in this way. So he went out to my left, then back to my right. And so he should be right in this area right here, and kind of an ellipse because he should be in the center of where that smoke dispersed from. So, and I just detected him. So as I'm looking at him here, I end up firing some salvos in there and hitting him, which resets the cap. And that's primarily what I wanted to do here, was reset the cap. And it gives him something else to worry about. He's going, oh, what the hell, where this gunfire coming from? What's happening here? So, as you can tell, we've got a good spread in the torps. We're in our defensive position where we can accelerate forward into the islands if we need to, but we can back up and kind of play. Another thing that you'll notice, the way I have set up here, is some torps will end up coming in, and we have this spit of land here. And if a ship comes very, very close, he doesn't have direct fire. He can't arc rounds in on us unless he's kind of back where the Amalfi is. But the Amalfi can't see us because of smoke, enemy smoke. And if torps come in, then they'll be blocked by this spit of land. But I can still see, because the highest point of my vessel can see the highest point on his vessel, and I can still shoot because I can arc rounds over, plus this terrain's not so high that I can't shoot over it. And boom, we land 3 torps. 1 was enough to kill him after he'd taken some damage, but we got some good hits on him. So as you notice, we're not focused on getting on the cap. Sometimes you do. You run in there, you cap a point while you have the advantage of speed and stealth, and you get the hell out as quickly as you can. Sometimes it's important to achieve that overwhelming superiority or to force opponents back out into open water before you move to that cap. And so it comes with the territory and just depending on what the situation is. In this situation, I had learned from some other gunfights. I think about this time the French had become pretty popular, and you didn't trade evenly with them. They could really damage you very badly and get away very quickly. So I was kind of learning to play off the caps. And CVs were definitely a menace. They still are. But so not being the first person on the cap where there's some kind of a focal point for everyone to go, oh, go right there and kill this thing, is very important. So what we do is we're looking for targets. Here we work the Del Gros, and we're just throwing rounds at him because we have high arc guns, and we can do that. So once we've forced the Amalfi back out into open water, the Missouri and the De Gros do not want to come in there, close range. We've got a lot of backup, Alsace, Massachusetts, St. Louis, Smolensk, Jean Bart, Baltimore. The eastern flank has been left pretty well open, but the bad guys have stacked here in the 6-7 line, and it's just not conducive to them being effective. There's a lot of terrain here at this crosshatch at DE45. And they're just in a really rough spot to do anything against these opponents throughout this area. They can't be shot, but they can't shoot back either. The Shio's out here working, but he can't engage the Colbert because his torps only work against CVs and battleships. So he really has nothing but spotting. He can damage this, I think it's a Richelieu down there. But again, he's not doing a whole lot. And at this point, I was really focused on what I was doing and hadn't really looked at how the rest of the map developed. So we're going to go ahead and move into the A cap and go ahead and cap that position. Now, as we've capped the position, our next deal is what do you expect? What do you want to do? For me, I love area denial. I love forcing and holding enemies in an area. I know that this area here is a serious choke point, and if we can keep them contained there, 2 things. 1, they can't cap any points, and 2, they'll be limited on their fire angles, which allows my team to move, disperse, and actually engage targets from at will. And I can get in free damage with torpedoes and just generally be a pain in the ass and a nuisance, which is what you are as a destroyer. You're a nuisance. That's why you take so much fire when you're detected, because you're a high threat. You have the ability to throw these torps decent ranges, and you do a lot of damage, and you can do it relatively stealthily. So we want to move ourselves into a position. As these enemies continue to do it, you're kind of predicting with these slower torps, where is the enemy going to want to go? Are they going to want to continue their attack? Are they pushing through a section? Are they going to want to try to escape from this area? Where are they going? Well, right now the Smolensk is here in this area. The Jean Bart's down here. Edinburgh's right up in amongst them. I decided to put a little bit of terrain between me and them and move up into this upper area here. And as we do that, we're looking for targets. And we continue to scan. So we see Baltimore's kind of sitting still behind the island. He's wanting to bow tank and do his regular business, which is fine. And that's what we want to see. And what we want to do is either punish them for staying there or force them into a more defensive position where their shot angles are limited. So one of the other things, too, that's important is that we don't have any friendlies that could possibly get between us and our torps, especially if we have slower torpedoes, because it's a long flight time between our drop where they hit the water and when they get to the target. So if Edinburgh decides to just power smooth in here, he's probably going to get in the way of the torpedoes, so that's definitely a risk of having the slower torps. So we're going to go ahead and line up on this guy, and we're going to throw a couple salvos at him. Now, keep in mind that, yes, you can be aiming at this guy, but this is also a traffic area. These vessels are moving north to south through this general area, and if your torp range extends into there, if you have multiple targets, either pick one or pick the lane where they're traveling through there. You're going, okay, I'm pointing this direction, and boats are constantly traveling through this area. I'm just going to put a good spread across that travel lane and see if I get anything. I'm fishing, you know. So we put a couple salvos, torpedoes towards this Baltimore. He doesn't end up taking any damage from it. One of the torps hits a spit of land in front of him as he's backing away because he probably has hydro up. We take this opportunity while he's distracted to actually put some gunfire on him. And this torp actually hits there's some underwater feature here, and it actually hits that and explodes. So he actually misses most of it. But while he's doing that, suddenly we get some torp hits on a vessel that's traveling to the left of him. And so while we're doing this, we go ahead and throw some shells, and we're maneuvering actively as well while we're doing this. And so somewhere in here, we get a hit on the Amalfi. Yep. So with a couple of decent spreads, we end up causing the death of the Amalfi there, which is nice. So now what we're doing is we're kind of resetting, and we're looking for that next target. Well, now currently the Edinburgh's kind of in the way. We don't have line of sight on the Baltimore. You got a Massachusetts B that we don't have line of sight on. We need to move into a new position to re-engage targets if we can. Whatever we can do to kind of keep these guys corralled in this area is kind of more or less what we would like to do. So we begin to advance on them. Radar pops. Now, at this point, you could immediately begin maneuvering, but if you look at what's left on the enemy team, Missouri is way out here. The Alsace is hounding him. Mass is behind an island. He has no line of sight. Stalingrad is behind an island, no line of sight. Neptune and Baltimore behind island, no line of sight. The Hirakazi was detected, but he's not currently doing anything. Colbert is out here probably dueling Ascio and St. Louis. So we don't really have anything that could possibly effectively engage us, or it's not going to be suddenly overwhelming and just blap the hell out of us. So we're not super concerned with maneuvering out of the gun range because they can't do anything to us. So we're going to continue our advance knowing that they can see us, but it's only going to be for like 30 seconds or so, and then we're going to be undetected and we can proceed on our way. So the Edinburgh's taking a lot of fire here, and these guys know that they're pinned, and the assumption is that they're going to try and break out and escape if they can, because that's what I would try to do. I would try to escape this death trap because they're being enveloped. If you can see Smolensk, Baltimore, Mass, Smolensk, Jean Bart, you know, they're bundled here, and the bad guys are enveloping them from both sides. So the natural thing would be we got to get the hell out of here. So what I want to do is take advantage of that by throwing torps and or engaging them with gunfire. So we're going to go ahead and throw a set of torps on one side of the island and proceed to the far side to engage other targets. If they decide to squirt out here, then they have to avoid some torps, which either means they need to stop, which keeps them in the containment area, or they advance into it and take some torps and then get attacked by multiple bad guys. Either way works for me. I don't care because it's either a win or damage, or both, and I'm okay with that. So Neptune ends up dying to the Jean Bart. He hesitates and dies. We go ahead and pop smoke here because the Stalingrad's relatively close, and the Baltimore's here on the other side of the island. Jean Bart is close to death, but he's not dead, so I hesitate on throwing torps until he actually dies. Once he dies, then I go ahead and throw the torps because he's so low that there's a lot of danger. Okay, so we have radar going. 7.5, Stalingrad, we know that he could do it, and the Baltimore could do it as well. Mass does not have line of sight. Stalingrad has no line of sight. Baltimore, as we know, does not have line of sight currently. We're not sure, but he's not shooting at us this exact second. We do have torps coming from the south. That's got to be the Hirakaze. So now we understand roughly where he's at. We start arcing shells in, and because we don't take any immediate gunfire, it's assumed that the Baltimore is not in a position to shoot at us. If he did, he would probably be detected. Stalingrad looks like he's focused on the St. Louis, which is fine with us. We're being targeted. Baltimore's detected. But currently now I've placed myself in an advantageous position. Baltimore has no line of sight. Mass has no line of sight. Stalingrad does, but he's not looking at me. So I'm going to continue to press this advantage to where I'm going to try and keep the edge of this island between me and him where I can arc rounds over. Also, we launched this set of torps very early on the corner of that island in anticipation of him advancing, and that ends up getting us a kill here. Now, while that little interchange was going on, the Baltimore dies. Great. Hirakazi still should be out to our south, but he hasn't been spotted in a while. His last known was here in the cap zone where I'm at. So my focus is the cap zone itself. Even though we're up, you never know what can happen, so cap those points if you have the opportunity, especially while you're not detected and not being harassed. Oh, yeah, I was talking shit to him because they were talking about pushing one side solo. So Hirakazi suddenly appears. He's got the 100mm guns. He's firing quickly. We're maneuvering. We've got torps coming in. We're going to move to dodge them. We do, unfortunately, or we do fortunately. And we're continuing to engage this guy. We're getting the short end of this engagement here. I've had to maneuver away from torps and take a lot of damage to do that. We're going to put terrain feature between us and him. We're going to continue to close the gap. He's taking gunfire from a lot of other ships. He's got smoke between us and him, which means that we'll spot each other about the same time. I go ahead and throw torps at the front end of where I think his smoke is at. The other set is loading. I think I'll swap back and throw torps through there just to give me a better chance. We're detected minimum, so we go ahead and engage with gunfire. We throw more torps. We turn out and away because we've got more guns on the ass end of the boat than he does. And we're going to go ahead and continue to engage him with salvos. And fortunately, we lay enough rounds in him to actually kill him and take him out. So a lot of stuff going on in that game. And it was a good game. Obviously, not a whole lot went against us. We had some poor DD play. We didn't have a lot of radar to combat, to fight against. We didn't have a CV to worry about. So this is like optimal. You know, this is really, really good layout for Tier 8. And we're fighting Tier 9s. Well, there were some 10s in there. So, you know, it was really a good layout for just gunfire. Biggest thing with the Americans, in my opinion, focus on your guns first. Worry about your torpedoes second. Or throw the torps early before you get into the gunfight. You know, it's either you're shooting the guns and you use the torpedoes to delay and gain more fire damage with your guns, or you use the guns to distract and delay to throw your torps. I mean, that should be pretty basic stuff. But to me, I focus more on working with the guns, and then if I get opportunities with the torpedoes, and I throw those. You saw there, I was anticipating maybe dying to the guy, so I was going to throw some torps through there to cause problems for him, give him something else that he had to worry about, so that I could work more with my guns easier. And if I got a torp hit, then he should be the end of him. So you really never know. Sometimes you'll get taken out by guns, but you've got torps in the water and you get a kill. Or you hit something else that's beyond that target as they're coming to help him. You never really know. All in all, it was a decent game. It really worked out because the layout of the enemy team also was a big factor. They didn't have a lot that could combat. We knocked out the Akazuki very early in the game. The Hirakazi was fighting on the other side of the map. Their radar wasn't really a factor. When it did come up, they weren't able to engage me. So it's, you know, use that terrain to your advantage, understand the ship's spotting mechanics and how far away you need to be before you get detected, and work those guns. Work those guns. That's really one of the big things. I had a 14-point commander, 15, but I only had 14 points. I focus into concealment and RPF to allow me to gunfight lower detectability ships or spot higher detectability ships or cruisers before I run smooth into them, especially if they're around terrain or hiding or something like that. And it gives you an advantage of knowing where the closest opponent is to you. Be aware that can be spoofed by DD that's here close to you and a cruiser that might be behind him. You know, they're in line with one another, but there's actually a DD that's closer than the destroyer or cruiser that you see. So just be aware of that. I hope this helped you out a little bit. If it did, thumbs up. If it didn't, thumbs down. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.